Welcome to the Objective Skewer podcast. My name's Mike.
Hi, I'm Emma.
This is episode 53, Teen Titans Go. Because Emma decided that was better than Avengers Assemble.
Yeah.
Do you want to explain why you thought that was better than Avengers Assemble?
Well, I've realised why. It's because the Snake Eyes Squad t-shirt is green. So that's why I can totally imagine Steve dressed as Batman, as Robin.
I was going to say, not Batman.
Not Batman, as Robin.
So, we're going to talk today. I did an interview with the Snake Eyes Squad, one of the teams that's risen to prominence in the last 12 months here in Western Australia for 40k.
Yeah.
I was fortunate enough to be invited out, which was only nicknamed yesterday the Snake Pit.
Nice.
That was an impromptu thing over a beer. I think the guys were talking about what they should call it. They get together and play fairly regularly, and they invited me out because they had some odd numbers, and it was cool to get out and play some games.
And then there was still an odd number.
Yeah, because we had, unfortunately one of the guys couldn't turn up. And then we played some games and did a recording and chatted to them. So that'll be the main topic for today, is talking to them, looking at how they met and what sort of games they play and what their take on the hobby is.
It's a bit of a follow-on from episode 50 where we talked about different places where you can game and different opportunities, and we talked about gaming clubs and gaming groups. This is one of the gaming groups that is here in WA.
Yeah, and we'll probably be touching base with a couple of the other the major teams that we see who come to events in future episodes, because it was cool to hang out with the guys and have a chat to them all. I say guys as a colloquialism because Bree is part of that team, so she came out and I think she played 3 games. I think it was I think she got 3 games in, but each time she's the most competitive of the bunch, and they're all very aware of that, and she teaches them how to play. So it was very cool to have her playing as well. And it was good for me because I've never played Steve ever, which is interesting. So I got a game against Steve for the first time. And I won't spoil too much of the interview because we did talk about how the 3 guys who were there for the recording process, it turns out one of them played me for their first ever competitive tournament. And the only other time I'd played the other one was at one of the local events here. And I don't remember the game, and he admits to not remembering the game either. But Steve clearly remembers the game because they like to hang it over him. So
Nice.
But yeah, so the best thing for me, though, is I picked up Phoenix Rising the day before on the Saturday, and then got to take it out and play it on the Sunday.
Yeah.
So we're going to cover a little bit of Phoenix Rising and Psychic Awakening now, because I want to.
Well, I suggested it, so I guess I want to too.
And then we'll get stuck into the interview, and then we'll be back, just the 2 of us again, to wrap up later in the episode. In the meantime, though, Phoenix Rising has been an interesting release. Psychic Awakening, when it was previewed by Games Workshop, was basically a something for everybody release, where you were meant to basically have new models and rules for every faction. And even though they messed up the photo that they released the first time around showing every faction, because it didn't have every faction in it.
But then they went back and changed it and added every faction.
They did. They went back and fixed it after that, which was good.
It just shows the ones that are less popular and that they don't care about, obviously.
That they don't think about, yeah. So we had the book come out on Saturday, and we also the pre-orders go up for Salamanders and Imperial Fists on Saturday, which our son's reasonably excited about because he wants to get all the cool artwork and stuff in it. I headed down to our local Warhammer store. Not so much a local Warhammer store, but one of our
There isn't really a local one.
No, it's about 45 minutes every way.
Well, yeah, that's it.
But one of our good friends who helped us in the very early days of Objectives Secured, Mitch, who runs one of the Warhammer stores, I headed down to him with my son, and we picked up the new book.
So is it Warhammer down there now?
It is Warhammer.
So is it Warhammer across all of WA
I think it is, yes.
Oh, there you go, I missed that.
It's very strange when you call him and he says, good afternoon, Warhammer Fremantle. And you go, that's not right. I'm so used to the Games Workshop Fremantle. And so it's I've told him more than a few times, if he sees my phone number come up on the handset, because he's got caller ID, he's not allowed to answer it that way. And he's going, no, but I've got another customer whose phone number's like 1 digit different to yours, and I can't get it wrong for them. So
yeah, you wouldn't want to answer it really inappropriately. And
he has done that because he thought it was me, and that's why he doesn't do it anymore.
Yeah.
So that was entertaining for me to find that out. So we picked up Phoenix Rising, got it home.
Yeah, now I have seen a lot of people saying that although they've said that there should be something for everyone, this is it. There's not going to be anything else. And I don't know. I just think maybe just hold your horses and actually see what happens.
Well, that's actually something I wanted to talk about right now because...
Oh, good. That's a good segue then, isn't it? I'm glad I brought it up.
There's a Psychic Awakening website. If I can remember the link, I'll put it in the show notes. But it basically showed the campaign and what was going on, and it was obviously only covering Phoenix Rising at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And so it shows like the galaxy map, and then it only had one little rune to click on.
Yeah.
Which was the Phoenix Rising one, sort of bottom right-hand corner of the map.
Yeah.
And then this morning, they added a second one.
Yeah.
And you can't click on it. It doesn't take you anywhere. It just says Psychic Anomaly Detected. And it's the Sisters of Battle, Fleur-de-Lis.
I quite like how they are doing these kinds of things. Like, it seems like there's a little bit of humour behind it.
Yeah.
You know.
Look, I like the fact they're slowly teasing it out. It just means that it's going to take them, I'm guessing, somewhere between 8 and 12 months to release the whole campaign. Because if we're going to get 3 factions, which is what we got with the Eldar one, in Craftworld, Drakari, and Inari, it's going to take a year for them to actually get through all of the different factions, which is fine. But I think that's...
A lot of work goes into this.
Oh, look, the book that I've got, all new stories. There's a bunch of new art in it. There's all the new rules that go in it. And then there's obviously the models that are attached to it.
Now, we won't spoil the spoiler for the book.
No, there's a couple of them in there that... my biggest frustration, which I will share with the book, because I actually got a copy of the campaign book as well, which was nice.
I was going to share your reaction to the...
Oh, yeah. Go on, share that, and then I will share my frustration with the other part of it.
Well, just your absolute horror of coming in and going, but they've done this, and they can't do this, and this never happens, and they've done this, and there's a box, but they've done this.
Do you want to know what's even more frustrating?
And it was done at that high pitch as well.
Later in the camp, this is in the campaign book we're talking about at the moment. Later in the campaign book, there's missions. Mm-hmm. And in the last mission, there's a little black blurb box, which I thought was logically part of the mission since it's on the mission page.
Yep,
it's not. Sense. It's 2 paragraphs of the story that finishes the rest of the book. So it's not actually like... They put a piece of artwork on the last page of the story, which they didn't have to put. They take that artwork out. These 2 paragraphs fit and finish the story. And if you don't go looking for it, like if you're not playing the narrative campaigns, you'll never see it. So I was flicking through it going, oh, what's this? Oh, what's this? And missed it the first time. The second time I went, oh, there's 2 paragraphs I didn't see. But that's actually my biggest frustration. My biggest concern with these books was...
Now I want to know what the 2 paragraphs say.
They take what I thought was a certainty and just make it all ambiguous again.
Okay, that doesn't surprise me.
No, it doesn't surprise me now that I've read that. And I was actually I was shocked, but I was pleased with the original ending because I thought they're actually...
really different.
Yeah. So they've gone back to essentially the status quo again. But... the worst part for me is...
It might have actually been a really terrible spoiler, so sorry about that, people.
Well, I don't think it's going to be, because the only way you get these stories is by buying the box. The $390 Australian box. So, because all of the content in that book, apart from the rules, which are duplicated in Phoenix Rising, so if you want all of the Craftworld rules, all of the obsessions, all of the rules, you have to buy the hardback.
Yeah.
If you want to play the campaign and you only want the rules for the models that are in the campaign box, you can just buy the campaign box.
Yeah.
But all the stories that are attached to it in the campaign box are completely unique to the campaign box. So if you don't buy the campaign box, you don't get the full, you don't get the whole Phoenix Rising story. So they've put it behind a paywall, which I find really frustrating.
Well,
and that was my biggest concern.
It's not like everything with this hobby is free and easily accessible, so they need to make their money back. You know, like there's that. As far as I was concerned, all the stuff that was in the Phoenix Rising campaign book the Blood of the Phoenix book campaign book should have been in the main Phoenix Rising book, because you shouldn't be requiring people who love the stories and the lore and have to spend $300 and potentially get models that they're actually not interested in. They just enjoy the stories.
So that was a bit frustrating. So I'm glad I got a copy of it through other means. But it was disappointing to see that they'd chosen that route, particularly when the box, despite it being great value, isn't a great selection. And that was kind of the worst part about reading those stories, was reading the campaign book. I haven't finished reading Phoenix Rising yet, but the campaign book describes how the story plays out with all the models in the book, and it feels really shoehorned in parts because, and Drahazar brings all these Hellions because reason, So they've definitely, it feels like they've decided what was going in the box, and then made the story fit it, rather than making a logical story and then trying to provide you models to reenact it. So that was a little bit frustrating. But getting back to the main point of Psychic Awakening with all the factions, where we kind of digress slightly there.
Yeah, that's very unlike us.
Obviously, the website, like we said, shows the fleur-de-lis with Psychic Anomaly detected, and you can't click on it. There's nothing you can do. Whereas if you click on Phoenix Rising, it takes you through to the articles and the videos and all the other bits and pieces. The video that they released on Warhammer Community TV on YouTube is different, because it's the same map and it kind of does the panorama spin around fancy thing, and then it starts with
the fleur-de-lis
and then spins through a bunch of different factions. It shows like Tyranids and da-da-da-da-da, and ends on the Iron Cross of the Black Templars.
Yeah.
Which is really exciting because Black Templars and Sisters of Battle actually go together in a lot of the stories. And the Black Templars aren't featured in the Imperial Fist book, which is about to come out, which everyone assumed they would be because they're a successor and they've always had their own kind of standalone thing. So it kind of makes sense that this next release will be the standalone Sisters of Battle release, and then the Psychic Awakening book will be Black Templars and something else. So we could end up with 3 updates by the end of the year.
Succession,
because we know the Sisters will be out before the end of the year, and we're already in mid-October, end of October.
It's still mid-October. Gosh, this year is flying by.
So, the Psychic Awakening, everyone just needs to cool their jets. They're coming.
Yeah, and this is it. We do see it with absolutely everything. We do see the sky is falling, and you were telling me something else that people were kind of up in arms about the other day. And I was like, oh my goodness, the sky is falling again. I thought it just fell last month. But it does seem to be this kind of, there's so many knee-jerk reactions to it. Like, I just think, just chill.
Well,
let's see what's coming before we get upset about the fact that something's not here.
Well, it's funny because on the last live we did before this recording, we were talking about the Iron Hands and all the issues that they created, and then 24 hours later we had the FAQ.
It wasn't 24 hours later.
It was like the next morning or something, wasn't it?
No, Richard posted the link as we were talking.
Oh, that's right, because we were finishing up, So, and they addressed part of the issues, which was great, but it shows Games Workshop's listening.
Not to that particular
live,
I think.
No, to the community. Community at large. I wish they'd watch. Some of them do.
Some of them do, which actually scares me quite a bit that they're potentially listening to this.
Please be nice.
Well, this is it. I often think that we're just sat here just jabbering away. I kind of forget that people listen. I don't like the thought of people listening to it, but anyway.
So, the new Psychic Awakening book's obviously on the way. Sisters of Battle aren't far behind. But with Phoenix Rising, we got build your own craft worlds, build your own Drakari obsessions. We got updated rules for Aspect Warriors. We got new data sheets for 2 characters, new plastic models for those 2 characters. And, by and large, I reckon there's, in terms of rules, if you want to get down to it, like for a narrative player, it's awesome.
Okay.
The build your own stuff is fantastic. You can get exactly the right theme you want. You can have it really reflective of all your narrative side of things. So if you're a narrative player and you're on the fence about buying it, do it. And you play Craft Worlds or whatever, Drakari, there's a lot in there to like, because if you're a grim, stoic craft world that excels at building vehicles, you can build your craft world that way. The problem with the book, which I won't bore listeners with our episode too much with this one, because I spent 3 hours last night recording a guest spot on another podcast as well, which we'll share once that's released on our Facebook page. The problem is 3/4 of those rules from a even remotely competitive player's point of view are not worth talking about. And they make some decisions in the rules, not just for them, but the Aspect Warriors and some of the updates, where they're trying to keep the themes and the historics of some of these units and rules and the fluff from these units and rules, but they haven't translated them well to the table. So there's a one we spotted when we were having a chat. There's one that's a craft world trait that says after you lose half the models in your squad, for the rest of the game you get +1 to hit. So why would I take that? So it does no benefit for single models whatsoever. So it doesn't affect vehicles, characters, anything like that. I have to have my units half dead to get any benefit for having it. That's very fluffy for the story of Morhaig and all the rest of it, but it's bad game design, because unless you're playing that narrative style of thing, no one's going to use it, and even the narrative players might struggle because it's not good.
Well, no one's aiming to have half their army dead, but if half your army is dead, then it's useful.
It is, but if your half army is dead, you've also got to take morale tests, and it's a mediocre benefit for the cost. If you like giving up what you are giving up for some of the fixed craft worlds or some of the other traits.
Yeah, look, if it was an automatic, like if you didn't have to pay for it and it automatically just came into effect, then I can see the point of it. But you're giving
up too much to get it, and that's the theme for a lot of this book.
But do you think it's that, well, by that point, actually, you need all the straws you've possibly got to clutch at?
The thing is, there's other things you could have taken to not get to that point, which is my problem.
I hear what you're saying. I'm just trying to tease it out a little bit and see whether or not is there.
There are a few like nice combinations in there. There's +1 armor over 12 inches, and there's the Salamander's reroll one where every unit gets a reroll to hit and wound, which is actually quite good for those single models where you're firing big guns in single shots. Can be very useful. There's a few to like. There's one that costs you both craft world traits, which I actually really am intrigued by. It lets you fall back and still charge again, which you normally can't do. And things like Wraith Blades and Shining Spears and some of the combat units are really going to enjoy it, but it uses both of your slots in selection. And is it good enough for that? I don't know. So I've got to try it out. The Drakari got off way better for what they were taking, because the cult obsessions and the Coven obsessions actually create genuine choices compared to the standard ones, where the new stuff does stuff that the Covens and cults didn't already do. So it's good to be able to go, like I want my Coven to use Dark Technomancers, or I want my cult witches to get +1 damage against everything that's lots of wounds. So they were really good. The Cabal ones, unfortunately...
I would totally pronounce that as Coven, by the way.
Oh, okay. Coven. Cult? Are you with me on cult?
Cult is cult, yeah. I would definitely go
Cabal?
with cult. I would pronounce that Cabal as well.
Okay.
Yeah, but just in case anybody else is listening and laughing at you saying Coven instead of Coven.
I don't know. This is 40k. I can pronounce it how I like.
Okay.
The Cabal on the other side, there's no reason not to continue taking the standard ones, much like the Craft World got, because everything that there's, I think there's 7 for the Cabal from memory. 5 of them need your Cabal units in combat, and the Cabal don't have any combat units. So
make it a bit tricky.
Yeah, and the 2 that there's one combination that's actually pretty good for the Cabal, which basically gives you half of Blackheart and a bonus for your splinter weapons. The only reason you would continue to take Blackheart is you want the stratagem vect, and you want Labyrinthine Cunning and some of the character stuff. But that's easy for Drakari, because you just take a detachment of Blackheart, absolute minimum, with like the Ravagers and the Archon, and then all of your Cabal infantry, which have your poison weapons, go into the other detachment. So you still get access to the relics, you still get access to the stratagems and all the bits and pieces you want from Blackheart. You're just getting more benefits from using the custom obsession as well. Yeah. So I feel like they got it half right, where the cult and the Coven are really solid, with options and choices, whereas the Craft Worlds and the Cabal's kind of a bit lackluster. I haven't been able to use the Incubi or Drahazar yet. I have a bunch of metal Incubi sat here I'm building because I knew the book was coming.
Yeah.
I hate metal models. I cannot believe at one point in time I went, I want more metal models. I don't like plastic models. I appreciate
it's so unlike a gamer to.
I appreciate how far the technology has come, because I had to find files, and then my files were dead, so I had to go and spend $8 on a new set of 3 files.
Oh my goodness!
To build these models, and they don't fit necessarily well, and some of the mold lines were hard to get rid of, and then you're having to use super glue, so they come apart if they've knocked over, and the back trophy racks have come off.
Oh, I did. Speaking of that. So when you're putting together metal models or resin models, you do actually have to use super glue to glue them.
Yes.
You can't use plastic glue.
Super glue or epoxy or something like that.
Yeah, any of those, the 2-part epoxy
Yeah.
glues those. But my point is you can't use plastic glue on a metal or a resin model.
No.
Just as my handy hint for the day, the key is in the name.
Yeah.
Plastic glue is for plastic. It is only for plastic. And so if you're working with a resin model or you've got your hands on some of the old... I don't think they make metal models anymore, do they?
There are a few that are mail order only from Games Workshop that are still in metal, but they're not actively producing them. Yeah. So once they're gone, they're gone.
So if you happen to get your hands on any of those metal models, then you will need to use
super glue,
some of the older technology glues.
So building these metal ones has reminded me why I like plastic so much, because all of my Aspect Warriors are still metal.
I interrupt this rant to give you this handy helpful tip.
Whereas building Jane Zar and Drahazar in plastic were a dream. They went together beautifully. Draz was very, very straightforward, except for you can't really convert him because he's from the knees down, he's attached to the base.
Yeah.
And when I say that, I mean the pieces. Like his lower leg comes attached to the terrain piece that he stood on. So you'd have to cut the leg off and then muck about with reposing him, which would be a lot of work. Although it looks like the two-handed demi-claves you get in the plastic kit, you could swap his arms for, because it looks like he's roughly the same size and shape. Mm-hmm. And with minimum work, you could. Jane Zar, on the other hand, beautiful, beautiful model. Goes together really, really well. Follow the instructions because she's a bit fiddly.
Gee, there's an interesting thought.
No, I'm an experienced hobbyist. The first thing I did was, I don't need instructions, and then looked at the parts and went,
where are those instructions?
I'm not quite sure where that bit goes and how that connects, and particularly with the way her shoulder pad and her backpack all join up. Mm-hmm. My biggest complaint with that particular kit is she's got the throwing disc, the Silent Death, in her hand, and the lug, it's separate at the wrist, and the lug in the wrist is so tiny that they might as well have just cut the wrist flat rather than having this little divot of plastic that doesn't really connect. Plastic glue fixes that, of course, because it welds it together, but it was a bit fiddly to get the Silent Death in just the right spot. Really beautiful, really nice models, really well balanced, and way more stable than I expected them to be.
Yeah.
So
a little bit smaller than I was expecting, to be honest.
They're both on 40mm bases. Draz is a little bit shorter, whereas obviously Jane Zar, being leaping, she's nearly 3 inches tall. She
is nearly 3 inches tall, but most of that's hair.
I think my biggest concern with her was actually those ribbons that are attached to the Blade of Destruction, but they're actually, there were 4 vent points on them, and I've cleaned them up and taken the mold lines off, and they're actually pretty stable.
Yeah, they are.
And she doesn't wobble on her hair either. She's got a little bit of movement, but not enough that I'm concerned about her.
Well, if you think that hair is probably the thickness of some models' feet, really. So
it's hollow around her head. The first inch of it that attaches to her crown is hollow, and then the rest of it's solid.
It's a beautiful sculpt, isn't it?
Yeah, it's absolutely gorgeous.
The movement and the motion that's in it.
I think she's less busy than Drahazar, because Drahazar's got the 2 backpack trophy racks, and then he's got his hair looping around, then he's got the horns, and then he's got the...
It does look a little bit like some kind of stick insect.
Well, he was a praying mantis in the last version.
Oh, right, that'd be why.
But he's a really gorgeous, lovely looking model.
I don't think I'm sold on the terrain that he's standing on, personally.
What's interesting, the terrain's got a Howling Banshee rune on the floor in front of him, and there's the little black creeper tendrils.
I like the creepers
that are coming up over the craft world, because they're actually fighting, without giving too much away, on a ruined craft world during Blood of the Phoenix. What was interesting was Jane Zar's base, if you have a look at it, has a face on it.
Yeah.
And
half a face.
Well, the interesting part is that's the avatar of Cain. That's it's actually a sculpture of the avatar, because his horns is what her hair attaches to. So it's definitely set. The models are definitely set at their dueling moment in the stories. But yeah, it's when you put them side by side, she just seems more impressive because she's bigger and wider and more dynamic.
Yeah, I think there's shoes, for want of a better word, give her that extra height as well.
Yeah, she's got very long... I don't know how she walks in them.
Well, no. It's obviously why she leaps.
That'd get tiring, leaping everywhere. But they are gorgeous models. I haven't seen the single price for them yet, and I don't want to know.
Yeah,
I don't need to know.
Neither do I. Okay, so after trying to create some kind of semblance of a structure here, after reading the new books,
yep.
What were your thoughts going into playing what was supposed to be 3 games yesterday?
Yeah, it ended up being 2 because we kind of had lunch and took a chill.
You had a buy, didn't you?
Well, there were one of the guys decided to paint, so I could have played a 3rd game. But at the time, Steve was getting ready to cook lunch, and they brought out the Warhound for a quick game, which I'll leave for the main topic. So it was an opportunity to kind of just chill out and have a chat and talk about some of the releases. Some of the guys grabbed my Phoenix Rising book and had a read. Going into the games, though, I wrote a list. It was a pure Aspect Warrior army. So I went out to the dungeon and grabbed I've got models there from the mid-90s from the original Aspect Warriors that came out to play again, which was really cool. And because it wasn't a formal tournament, I took way more models than I needed. I took a bunch that I could just try out whatever I felt like. I ended up playing the same army twice because I thought there's no point in playing one game and then switching it up.
No, which we do talk about quite often, in that it's actually important to have lots of points of data before you start making assumptions and those kinds of things.
But because I ran nothing but Aspect Warriors, it let me try all of the new Aspect Warrior powers twice because I had all these different units. The only ones I didn't get to try were the Fire Dragons. Without poo-pooing on the release too much, the Fire Dragon ones are all terrible.
In your opinion?
There's one that might be usable, but yeah, I think the Fire Dragons got off the worst by and large. The Warp Spider ones are in a similar sort of boat. The biggest problem I have with some of these powers, because some of them are just straight up better than what they get. Some of them there are genuine choices, like where there's 2 or 3 that you might want to choose for different scenarios. The biggest problem I have with a lot of these is they're so easily fixed to keep the theme that they were going for. Keep all of because a lot of the names are driven by the old rules for them or units that stuff they used to get. So there's one for the Fire Dragons that lets them turn their melter guns or fusion guns, into pistols for a turn. It's so situational. I have to be in combat with you for your whole turn and survive to get to my shooting phase to use this power, and I still have to be in combat at this point when I could just fall back to get any use out of it. So, whereas they used to have melter bombs in combat, so why not give them the melter bomb in combat was exactly the same as these pistols would be in combat. So why not just abridge it and turn around and go, okay, cool, instead of making them pistol 1, the Exarch lets them use them as a 1-attack melee weapon, which essentially does the same thing, but you've instantly given the unit back what it used to do and kept the theme and given them a bit of versatility on the tabletop.
Yeah.
And I feel like there's a lot of those that the Howling Banshees, given they've got new models, I was so disappointed because the 6 powers there's 2 of them that only affect the Exarch, which is fine. All of them have 1 or 2 powers that only affect the Exarch, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. And they're okay.
Mm-hmm.
But you're giving up -1 to hit for the whole squad.
Yeah.
So the other ones had better be worth taking.
Yeah, that's it.
One of them gives them a 5+ feel no pain, and the net result of a 5+ feel no pain in combat compared to -1 in combat to hit is a net 0 most of the time.
Mm-hmm.
But I'd rather the -1 and stop the dice at the front end rather than relying on it at the tail end. And then there's one that I feel like was the biggest problem was it's called Decapitating Strike. And on an unmodified 6 to wound, the Exarch inflicts 1 mortal wound in addition to any other damage. It sounds good. It's not, because it only affects the Exarch. But if they'd made it affect the whole squad, you'd seriously look like you'd give up the -1 to hit for their ability to go in and do that. Now, it sounds overpowered until you realise there's only 21 attacks for the whole squad. They need to hit first. They're only hitting on 3s, so you're going to get 15-ish hits. And then it's only on 6s they trigger the mortal wounds. So you're going to get 3, maybe 4 if you're really lucky, average mortal wounds.
2 if you're really unlucky.
Which is good, but it's not game-breaking, particularly when they've turned around to the Striking Scorpions, who already do mortal wounds on 6s at the start of combat, every round of combat. They've given them an Exarch ability that makes them do it on 5s instead of 6s, that affects the whole squad.
Yeah.
So there's these weird design choices where they could have just given that to the whole squad, and Banshees would have been, oh, okay, cool. Like, they don't get a strength buff, but you can go in fishing for 6s, hoping to kill models using that process.
Mm-hmm.
And they've given it to Striking Scorpions, and they gave it to Swooping Hawks and up the Grenade Pack. So the Grenade Pack now does mortal wounds on 5s as well instead of 6s. Why did they not give it to Banshees?
Mm.
And there's those design... That's kind of where my disappointment lies, is there's the hints of how good this could have been, and within the narrative and within the story, and kept all of the fluff that the rules writers and the design studio want. But I feel like an hour with a couple of other players, like when I was on Splintermine last night recording that podcast, we kind of went through the Fire Dragon chart and went, how do we fix this? And in 5 minutes between the three of us, we had stuff that would have been workable and play testable.
Mm.
And I think that's where my frustration stems from, is that it's so close to good that it just feels like a missed opportunity.
When they write these things, do they have one set of writers that do all of them, or do they have people who play specific, or who specialize in specific armies and to work with those ones?
In years gone by, they did have a head writer who did play the army actively. So Phil Kelly was the main Eldar player.
Mm.
And after a couple of the authors who shall remain nameless for purposes of integrity, were getting a lot of flack on social media and stuff for some less than well-received rules in some of the past editions. The codexes don't list who the head writers are now. They just list the design studio.
Yeah.
Which makes a lot of sense, because you don't want people getting bullied for writing a codex that's been approved by management and gone through the design process.
No, you don't. I just wondered what the process actually was, because I was thinking that in the nicest possible way, it's all well and good you saying that you guys have fixed it, but what's the, I guess what's the motivation behind them writing it the way that they have written it? Do they have some other ideas in their head around why they've done it this way? Or is it that actually, because they have, I guess it's a bit like going to the doctor when you go to a GP compared to when you go to a specialist. You've got people who are writing it who kind of have some knowledge about all of it, rather than really intense specialist knowledge about that particular faction or that particular...
I think a lot of them is the design studio going, hey, do you remember when this unit did this? Wouldn't it be cool if they did something similar now? Like they gave the... there's one called Burning Fist for the Fire Dragons, which gives the Fire Dragon a fist that's on fire and he can punch things. Sounds really cool. But the squad never makes it to combat. And if you've taken Burning Fist, then your pistol one, you can't take the pistol one at the same time. So, and you'd rather the pistol one because that at least affects the whole squad. Whereas if Burning Fist had affected the whole squad, or had given them rerolls to wound, like the whole squad got rerolls to wound, or something that affected the squad, then you might half consider it. I don't know that you would for that particular one. Or they gave...
I would like to know what they were thinking when they actually wrote that. So, because surely they wouldn't put things in there if they didn't think, well, this could work really well in X, Y, and Z situations or scenarios. So there's a really good, valid reason for having this as an option and for actually choosing it as an option.
I think that's the disconnect, though, where I think there's the internet has propagated a slightly more competitive mindset, and that can leave us in a situation where you go, cool, that one's not worth taking, that one's not worth taking, these are the good ones. I think this book was written for the narrative players.
Yeah.
So there's some good options, but there's not great options. And the guys who play narrative events and narrative games will select some of the ones that aren't necessarily the
fluff,
the optimized ones, because they're cool and they're fluffy. And I feel like that's part of the design studio's thought process for this book was, hey, wouldn't it be cool if? Do you remember when? Hey, yeah, let's do that again type stuff.
Which again comes back to, I wonder what the motivation is. Like, is the motivation to actually try and move it away from being hyper competitive, or to try and offer options for more narrative, less competitive gaming options?
Well, they're clearly listening to the competitive circuit off the back of the Iron Hands FAQ. And the Iron Hands and the latest Space Marine books have all been very good. This feels to me like the Vigilus books, where they threw a bone to some of the factions who weren't performing as well and went, here you go, wait until you get a new codex. So I'm hopeful that this is the prelude to a new Craftworld codex, because the Craftworld book is actually one of the oldest books in 8th edition now. And, you know, doing an update to them 6 months, 8 months from now, based on the Space Marine release schedule that we've just seen, makes a bit of sense. But, yeah, I don't know. I think that, I mean, I said it last night on Splintermind, someone like Jane Zar, the Phoenix Lords, she's 115 points.
Yeah.
And she was fun to play. I used my Rogue Trader era model for her.
I was going to say, she's still hasn't even been undercoded yet. You can't play with unpainted models.
This is obviously a re-release of a model released back in the mid-90s. And I found her in the carry case when I was packing yesterday and went, I'm taking her. And she was fun to use. I got to use her in 2 games. I found a neat little rule with her Storm of Silence ability that, for those playing at home, it's instead of using a normal 4 attacks, you can count up how many enemies are within 2 inches of her, and you get 1 attack for every enemy. But you don't have to attack those enemies. So I was able to charge a unit and a character yesterday, count up 7 models from 6 models from the unit and the character, all within 2 inches of her. But I was also able to count up other models from other units that were within 2 that weren't in the combat. So they generated extra attacks for her, even though she wasn't fighting them and they weren't in the combat. So there are going to be situations where you dive her into combat and get 13 or 14 attacks because she's on a 40 mil base now, and I was using her on a 25.
Yeah.
But it's a really situational sort of situation, like situational situation. It's a really situational benefit for her.
Yeah.
And she's okay. For 115 points, she's okay. I would have rather them go, you know what? She's 200 points. Give her some of these Exarch powers, which as a single model she would benefit from. Give her an invulnerable save and make her scary like some of the Space Marine characters and the Chapter Masters, which is what she should be. And I'd quite happily have them go, here's the Phoenix Lords. They're all 200 plus points. You can only have 1 of them in your army, so you can't run a Supreme Command detachment of all 6.
Why not?
Oh, look, narrative, I'm there. Competitive, not so much. But if they made them all that Abaddon, Marnius Calgar, 200, 250 point characters where at the moment if she charges Abaddon or Calgar, they laugh. Yeah. She might sneak a wound through and do 1 or 2 damage and then they murder her.
She's gone, yeah.
I would rather them look at her coming across the table and pause and go, oh, I don't know about this.
Do we turn around and run?
I might win this, I might not.
Yeah.
And that's unfortunate because if they'd done that, I actually think the player base would receive it really well. Because if you then turned around, but like I said on Splintermind as well, the problem with doing that is then the Avatar at 220 points needs a drastic increase in his abilities and his power and his points, which is sort of this flow-on effect for the army. So there's an active design decision there. And I feel like that's what's happened with some of these Exarch powers, is they've actively not done what would be, like the Banshee decapitating strike is a really easy fix, just to affect the whole squad. But then by doing that, why do you take Striking Scorpions, who are dealing mortal wounds and finally might see some table use? So I kind of get the design choices there. The problem is they've just released Banshees. Make them good. Yeah. Make them worth taking. Anyway, I really do like the book as much as I've just complained about it. I think there's some really interesting stuff there. You are going to see it used in competitive. The Crimson Hunter Exarch is amazingly good with the new powers. The Dark Reapers get something out of it. Shining Spears get something out of it. You will see Striking Scorpions again for different bits and pieces. Dire Avengers have got some really great abilities. My favourite one being Avenging Strike. If you lose 1 model in the squad, and at that point, after you've lost the first model and you've still got the Exarch, you get +1 to hit and +1 to wound for the whole squad for the rest of the game. Compared that to Children of Morahai, where you only get +1 to hit and it's after you use half the models. Yeah. It's hard to argue for that one. But it means that the Dire Avengers are hitting on 2s with 2 shots each, and then they wound anything in the game, literally anything in the game, on 5s. And with Bladestorm, in effect, any 5s or 6s are -3. So I had 2 of them yesterday jump out of a Wave Serpent and kill a Lehman Russ that was on a couple of wounds, because all of a sudden I'm fishing for 5s with 6 shots between 2 models.
Yeah.
It was really positive. People will be wary of Dire Avengers doing that sort of thing. And the best thing, I spent the whole day with them in Wave Serpents, waiting for the Wave Serpent to die because it gets shot and explodes, hoping that I'd roll a 1 on one of the 10 dice so that one of them died in the crash, so that it would trigger their special rule.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, there was one crash that killed like 6 in the squad because I rolled a lot of 1s. But, compare that to the standard X-Arch power of 4+ invulnerable for just the X-Arch.
Yeah.
I'm going to swap that because there's value for the squad.
Yeah.
So, yeah, you will definitely see it used, particularly for the Drakari, because some of the Drakari stuff was really, really good, really solid stuff.
And as much as I'm really interested in enjoying this conversation, we did start this with the intention of doing a very short, brief introduction.
That's true. Anyway, we'll leave it there because we're going to jump into the interview with the boys from Snake Eye Squad.
And girl from
She wasn't there for it. That's why I said the boys.
Okay.
She had to leave early, sadly. But we'll be back in just a second for that interview, and then you'll hear our dulcet tones again after the interview for a wrap-up. All right, so we're doing something a bit different for this episode. We're going to be talking to half of the Snake Eyes squad. So I've got Matt, Paul, and Captain Steve.
G'day.
And we've just finished a full day of gaming at Steve's place, playing some games and having some laughs and some drinks, and it's been a pretty crazy day. But I thought it was a good opportunity to have a chat to you guys, talk about where the teams come from, some of the stuff you've been doing, and give the listeners of Perth and beyond an idea of what one of the teams in Perth is like. So I've known Steve for a little while now, Matt for a little bit less time, and Paul a little bit less time on top of that. But Steve and I met at Outpost 6030. I can't even put a date or a year on it, really. It'd
be your second Masters. Was my first event. My first 40k event
4 years
was
ago.
Second Masters.
Almost 4 years ago it's within a month of 4 years ago.
Yeah.
Which is exciting. And you were playing Black Templars at the time.
Yep, my Black Templar 10 Terminator list, which ran in 2 years in a row.
And it's you've come a long way in the tournament scene since then. But before we get too into what you do personally, let's talk about the team. So how did the team form? Where did you guys meet? And I suppose what I'm interested in is for the perspective of people who might be looking at forming their own teams and trying to get a cohesive gaming group together, not even necessarily to form a team to play at team events, but just like, how did you all meet and how did you get to playing games as often as you do?
Sure. So most of our team just comes from meeting at Outpost 6030 in South Perth. So it was Matt, James, and Alex sort of just met through catch-up games, pick-up games in meeting through Outpost's page. When the time rolled around for the second WATC last year.
So 2018's
2018's WATC.
That was the third.
That was the third. So then we were looking for a team, or they were looking for a team, and myself and Paul. So Paul is my oldest mate. I got him into gaming in about 2003, and then I eventually.
Yeah, but he's
out.
Only a youngster.
He's only 2 months younger than me. We're both youngsters.
I should also point out, for those of you listening at home, we are sat outside, so there's a little bit of background noise. I'll do my best in post to clean it up, but there are some crickets chirping, and we've got some cars passing, and we've only got 2 mics, so we're going to be handing those around a little bit.
I'll try and speak clearly then. Yeah, so after getting Paul into gaming, I then, when I turned about 15, discovered girls. Dropped out of gaming for 10 years.
That pretty much happens to most hobbyists,
pretty
I find. Is that sort of 15 to 17 years, and then you come back in early, mid-20s, somewhere in that sort of space, when you've settled down a bit?
Long-term girlfriend, I think I was married at the time. I'd just gotten married around the time. And then Paul took me to a game at Outpost. Actually, not at Outpost. The hall was being repainted or redecked at the time. So we had Jacob, one of the long-time members of Outpost, hosted a couple of games in a rooftop canopy somewhere in UWA.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so just a group of 6 guys playing a big mega battle and pulled out some of my old models.
Oh, cool.
And that was a lot of fun and dragged me back into the game. So thanks, Paul. My wife really doesn't love you for that. So Paul and I, we were thinking we wanted to hop in on WATC, and we found Matt, James, and Alex had posted on looking for players. So we just joined up, saw, okay, sounds good. And Bree hopped on the train as well, just through Facebook comments. People just, I think they were posting on the event even, or the OPSEC.
We've got a few different spots you can post stuff.
The OPSEC Gamers pages was really, I think, might have been the actual one that we joined on. So we made up a team, met up, and tried to play some games against each other. The original post, I think, was written by Alex, was we're not competitive. We're not good players. We're new to the hobby. We're just coming down. We're going to get watch my language, we're going to get our asses handed to us. And then, of course, we tried a couple of trial games and tried a bit of theory crafting. And, of course, our very first game came up against Mike and the other mercenaries, who I remember seeing to him winning the event.
Yeah, we did. We won it 3 years in a row. I didn't play it this year.
That was a real trial by fire.
That was our 3rd year in a row, yeah.
Yeah, so that was rough. That was me throwing
that was when you bust Matt against my tower with his guard. And
yeah, so that was Mike's crazy tower that no one understood how it worked, and then we discovered, that's not fun.
Yeah.
And I ended up against, somehow I managed to scrub all 6 of our matchups, which wasn't so good.
No, but I think what team should take away from it, though, is you guys, that first year was probably pretty rough for you guys as a team in terms of your win-loss ratios at WATC.
Yeah, I remember James was playing fluffy Black Templars.
Yep.
MSU mixed close combat and shooting Black Templars, which is probably just about the weakest army in the game.
Yeah, and it hasn't got any better. Maybe it will in the future, but
yeah, at the time it was fairly new. That wasn't so hot. I think we had Paul playing his Admech with a Knight back before the Knight Codex, so they weren't very good either. I think Matt had his Talan Guard with his outflanking Shadow Sword, which
was the only model that survived against my tower.
That was a bit of a mean one.
Yeah, well, you brought it on. It did nothing to me, and then at the end of the game, I flew all the fusion guns over to it, and it was still alive on turn 5, but it wasn't looking healthy.
Bree is probably our most competitively minded player. The best head in the game for the most.
She's mostly Death Guard and Chaos these days.
And she played Tyranids at the time.
Yep.
She played actually probably our strongest list of the day. Myself, I was playing Custodes, and Alex was playing his Orcs.
Yeah,
he was playing his Orcs. So, I was the only player on the team to get any points for that round. I got a 14-6 win against Glenn. It was the only game I've ever played against Glenn, but that was great fun.
And then everyone else got trashed.
0 for 20. 0 for 20. 5 0 for 20s and 114 for 6.
Look, they're consistent.
Yeah. But put us against, the next round was up against the Youngbloods, which
was a reversal of fortune.
We had a reversal of fortune. I was, somewhat. We didn't get a smashing win that time.
You won.
Matt was a bit of an unkind thing because we found one of the other players had a shadow. One of the Youngbloods players had a Shadow Sword, same as Matt had a Shadow Sword, but Matt's was Talan, so could do the outflanking stratagem, and we forced that matchup to happen.
That's part of the game, though.
Part of the game. We felt a little bit unkind doing it. but
I think that's that first WATC is interesting because a year on to this year's WATC that was back. Did we do that in August? I forget. I lose track sometimes. I think it was August. So that was April 2018 through to August 2019. So you guys had 16 months, 17 months, something like that to basically
piece
play
it together
and hang out.
Yeah.
Am I right in saying that you guys were playing games through that period? Because I know that you kind of debuted the T-shirts, which you're all sat here wearing, and the banner and everything at WATC this year with the dice turning up a bit late, but I'm all too familiar with that.
Yeah, we're not the only ones. I think Tabletops also had theirs turn up late.
Yeah, I've ordered dice before for the show and all the rest of it, and they never turn up on time.
No, so that didn't happen, unfortunately.
But you guys sort of solidified it as a team this year when you turned up in the matching shirts and the banners. And
yeah, so we started at just the group chat that we'd started up for WATC planning and doing our theory crafting and everything. And that really just turned into I suppose, just a group chat, a generic friends group chat talking. A good way to say this: talking trash to each other. And that's probably for some of us our most active group. We're in there every day, all day, every day, just chatting. Despite most of us should be working, we're all kind of talking to each other.
Just be careful what you say, because who knows who hears this.
I think my work people might listen to this. So we were talking that way too much and too much trash talking about each other's armies and teasing each other. And organising lots and lots of games.
That's good.
So we that just got us great understanding of each other's armies, and we call each other enablers because we enable each other. It's we constantly tag each other on Facebook groups. I spend
most of the day today winding up Matt about conversions and basically spending his virtual money.
Oh, that's what we do. We'll tag each other and say, "Hey, Matt, this guy's selling tower.
Yep.
Hey, Paul, that guy's selling guard." So we that's I think we've broken each other's banks pretty thoroughly.
What was good for me turning up today was that you guys obviously have invested some money as a group in mats and terrain and boards, and there's a fair amount of it that's portable as well, which is great. And with you hosting, you've got a nice space here. We're sat at the moment just outside on the patio. There's enough space for 3 tables, all under cover. It's well lit. It's not too hot under here. And between the 3, the 6 of you, I should say, we had 3 full tables worth of gear. I supplied a bit extra because there were me and another hangers on today.
Yep, so that was Bree's boyfriend Mike coming along, and Mike Bask, the pair of them. So we had 8 players. Until one of our guys unfortunately dropped out sick, James is quite unwell. We're set up to have 4 tables. We'll have 4 tables, so 8 players playing out here.
Which is cool.
So, which is doable, yeah.
It, I suppose it, and correct me if I'm wrong, I suppose it means that as a team, if one of you can't host, you're portable enough that if someone else can say, hey, you know what, I can accommodate 3 in the house, or I can accommodate 3 at my place in the garage or the shed or wherever it is, you're portable enough that you can
realistically go. So my wife's works shift, she's a doctor, so she gets really long hours and she gets her long rosters 12 weeks out, which means as soon as she gets that, it's all right, guys, booking the dates. We're going to try and have at least one game day during this roster.
And you're spread out all over Perth as well, aren't you, in terms of...
I think so. Breeze in Morley, Matt's in Aussie Park, Paul's in South Scarborough, sorry.
You've got to make sure you get the suburbs right. You don't want to downgrade him too far.
Yeah, I know. They're all north of the river. It doesn't matter. Myself out in Leaming, and Alex is in bloody Whoop Whoop. No one knows where he is. Near Morley. So no, that's how we organise and we kept our group together. And I might
You're reasonably central where we are here. I mean, it's not too far from the main arteries, so getting here's not terrible.
Yep. So then for our game this year, we really got onto the merchandising train.
Yep.
Which
you were doing really well at one. Like you were looking at a top 3 finish at one point there until that final round.
That final round, we did not deserve to play that top team. We got our sorry butts handed
to
us,
and that was a result of pair downs and matchups and just due to who could play who in the top 4.
I was very disappointed. I was on a hot streak of 80 for 0 points.
You were,
in the first 4 games.
And that last game not so much.
No, I was 0 for 20. Bloody Dave Horn, his Dark Elder, a great player and someone whose army could not be better built to kill mine. To be perfectly honest.
But I think that. I think you guys finished 5th this year. Was it 5th or 6th?
6th, I think, yeah.
Out of the 16, was it 16? 14 teams. I forget. I think it was 16 teams.
Yeah.
Like, considering your first year where...
We were pretty close to bottom.
We had 20 teams, and I reckon you probably would have finished somewhere in the bottom third.
Yeah, we were pretty low.
Like, you guys have come a long way in just over 12 months' time in terms of supporting each other, building new armies, getting better at the game, practicing... And I mean, I haven't played... I don't think I've ever played you.
No,
I did today.
That was our first game.
And I don't think I've ever played Paul as well. So I got to play both of you today. I've played Bree before.
You have played Paul, because I remember Paul coming up against your Sisters of Battle in 7th edition thinking this is going to be a cakewalk.
Oh, okay.
And you cleaned him up, I seem to remember. that was a Skulls a couple of years ago. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
So no,
sorry.
So we've gotten better, but I was overthrown as captain after my first year. I think we're going to go to a rotating captain model. So Matt's stepped up as captain for WATC
and Matt
this year.
Valiantly found the bus and threw himself under it.
Yeah, so I might pass over to Matt, have a go to
the Valiant,
have a chat to our current captain,
like tire-ridden captain.
It was good fun.
He says very hushed and after a mouthful of a certain liquid that we won't mention. So. From memory this year, I think it was Alex who put the team into... Was it Alex or one of you put themselves into down under pairings and that they weren't the captain? Which meant I had to go in and allocate the captain because no one could figure out how to do it.
That's right. And then on the day, it was another Matt Smith that was the captain on the squad. So I'm like, Mike, what? I'm a bad captain. What's happening?
That was because the outgoing captain put the wrong Matt in the software, I suspect.
Yes.
So yeah, you guys, we did two days this year, so 5 games, 2 days, as opposed to the 1 day, 4 games the year prior. We upped the points this year. Missions were different, but the same sort of format. And I know you guys did a bunch of practice in the lead up to try and... Because those missions weren't exactly straightforward. They're layered, complex, and particularly Mission 5 was really fiddly. And I know that you guys did at least 1 or 2 weeks of games in the lead up to try and wrap your heads around it all.
Yeah, so we had, much like today was, we organised a couple of different, one was I think a good 3 months out, and then the next one was about 2 weeks prior, where we just essentially did the same thing. We didn't do the pairing process so much, but we just, we played those games, we played them to time, just to really push ourselves to play tight games, because after the first one we did as a team, we just came in as 6 casual people that just really liked the hobby and didn't expect much, and then we're like, oh, that was good fun, and we, over the 12 months building up to this one, really enjoyed it. We just became solid friends, and so we're like, okay, let's be a bit more serious about this. Bree was quite happy with us committing to that. And so, doing those practice games, just running those tight games, analysing each other's lists, and like really debriefing after. And it was quite fun. It wasn't a serious process at all, but just working through that really helped us get our minds around how our armies could work, what weaknesses we had from other people's perspectives, because, they're your blind spots on your own army because you can't see them, and someone else will.
What about so I suppose the next step for you guys, because, having played Steve today, I only got 3 turns in, which I finished the game up on, but we both agreed that by the end of turn 5 or turn 6, you probably table me, but I was probably still going to be up on points. And then Paul and I played a 2-point end of turn 5 one where I managed to sneak in a win. So clearly the game side of things, you guys have gotten better at the game significantly. And I don't mean that with any disrespect to your past playing. I'm just saying that the practice has paid off. You guys are much more competitive as players.
Oh, absolutely. The thing I don't think the guys have realised, but the WOTC last year was the first competitive tournament I'd ever played in for 40k.
Well, that was, and then you played me game 1.
Yes. So that was
I'm sorry.
No, that's fine. It was great. So, I got back in the hobby in I think it was end of 94, 95, but then did the whole, left it. Wasn't so much girls, it was life, competitive sport. Then left that, hit 20s, and I want to paint miniatures again. This is great. And I've always been about the fluff and the hobby side of it. So, I'm a fluff bunny. I love it. But really enjoyed playing with the guys. And so, let's do this tournament thing. I'm like, well, I'm playing with 5 other dudes. This will be really fun. This will be just a good evening and day, and didn't know what to expect. So the perspective changed from that, and then just talking through that and a lot of the learning, just the games we played since then, it really upped everyone's game, and it gave me personally a lot more perspective on a lot of the nuances of the game, that I was like, well, I've got big tanks, I'm the guard, I'm a wall of guns, this is what we do. And facing, say, an army like a jumpy tower army was like, oh, there's more to this game.
Yeah. I actually feel really bad now. I didn't realise that was...
oh, no, you'll never hear me whinge about it. I just love rolling dice with people.
Well, it's funny what you were saying earlier, where you guys started as a casual group. I would still argue that you're all still fun, casual style players, but you've actually found a way to go, you know what, we're going to a serious tournament, so we're going to put on our game faces and we're going to try and build harder lists, practice and compete. But that doesn't stop you then building full fun lists, and like we did today, where we saw you play Steve and his Warhound. The first game lasted all of 12 minutes, and then the second game mustn't have gone much past about 15, and it was a win apiece. So the fact that, you can get there and go, let's just see what happens, and Steve was going, oh no, I'm going to lose this, and you just 2 turns mopped the floor with him, game over. And then we reset, played it again, and he mopped the floor with you. And that... I know there's a lot of people who think about competing. I mean, Steve's talking about taking the Warhound to Masters, which I think is insane and awesome.
I'm fully supportive of this.
But the fact that you don't take yourselves that seriously, to go to Masters with a Warhound or whatever you feel like taking, because you want to play it and you want to have fun, because you've got the right goal and expectations for yourself at Masters, is just as good as going to WATC and going, you know what, we're actually going to up our game, we're going to try and compete, we're going to try and win. And you guys did really well. Just that last round was...
a little bit unforgiving.
So
I think a lot of that comes from just the respect for each other's kind of time, and that's like, well, if we're all going to put this time into this, we may as well do the best we can for everyone else. We're all a bit competitive in general. Breeze definitely pushes that. This is it, and so it kind of feeds into that. But none of us take ourselves so seriously that became the overriding drive. It was more just, well, it's a chance to play 5 games over a weekend, and most of the time, you say, oh, who's free? When can we roll dice? So it's almost a bonus if those games go well for us, even at WOTC. Great. But it's just the fun of the hobby in a bit more structured environment. So I don't think any of us ever would let the competitive spirit override anything else around it.
With the team environment, I've always said the team events are my favourite ones to play as a competitor, because I feel like you get a sense of something greater than yourself when you're working with the team, and it doesn't necessarily matter whether you win or lose if the team's doing well, and you can sort of push through some of the morale issues, particularly when you have a hard round and you lose a game or you get bust and you end up with a game that you just go, I can't win this. It's a bit demoralising, and you've got a teammates there who you maybe still win the round. Oh, you let us dodge that, and there's a lot of that sort of keeping each other on point and supported that you don't necessarily receive in singles events, and it's something bigger than you.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think, this year, we definitely tried to get around that a bit more. I went in with my Gene Steel Cold army. It wasn't something, it was a really strong army. I think Gene Steel Cold are an amazing faction, but I'm not a strong player. And that was fine. I would in the end, and like with the matchup process, I'm like, well, I'll take the biggest threat to all the rest of the armies off the board, happily. Go roll some die with someone, let them kill a lot of models. They have a good time. I don't mind. I have a pretty good time as well, and it helps the team. And but then a lot of there was some games where I'd finish up mine quite quickly, getting rolled, and then go around, cheer, just check on everyone. Not so much be like, how's the team doing? Just being around there, having that little bit of moral support. Oh, the game's going well. Oh, cool. Game's going not well. Oh, just have a little chat with them, spend some time, just to kind of keep everything flowing nicely.
Yeah,
even in those moments.
But I think that's one of the key things for any event you're travelling for is the same. If you can go with a group of mates, even if it is a singles, at least you're there to kind of support each other and be part of things. And I think what we've seen, particularly over the last 2 years with the Toy Soldier Cartel and then the Mafia and you guys, we've seen groups get together who are like-minded, who have the same, they like spending time with each other, they like playing games with each other, and you actually have the teams that are proper teams, for lack of a better description, did well at WATC because they're all mates and they've been playing games and they've been working together. Whereas the teams who are a bit less connected, it's still 6 guys playing 6 games, not one team playing one game, if that makes sense. So,
and I think that was the biggest shift in perspective from last year to this year. Like, last year we tried and we talked about it a bit, but this year we really knew, having already done one WATC, we're like, okay, there is that bigger sense than just, okay, well, this table's a wash, but that's okay because it meant that the other 4 or 5 tables suddenly are going to be okay and that kind of thing, and that we didn't have last year at all. We just kind of, we did a bit. But this year is very much, that was... sorry? Oh, actually, yeah, that was a good point. Steve and I spending a lot of time getting around the matchup process and doing the traffic light system, which I know what other teams are doing as well. That ended up being a lot more time intensive than I'd realised, but was really good on the day because it meant that I was at least fairly conversant with the list in each team. We did a little debrief and go, okay, it's this team, that's these lists, cool. And just those little things hugely changed our perspectives for the kind of tournament, just because of those little times.
That matchup process is probably the next piece of the puzzle for you guys to really solidify. You seem to do pretty well with the matchups this year. There were a couple of blips particularly that last round seemed to be a bump in the road in terms of the matchup process.
I will admit I was a bit fatigued by that stage. The rest of the time I'd been really on it. At that one, I think it was just a bit of fatigue on my part and kind of going, actually, do you know what? This is a good point to make because I think we'd got it in our head. They were a very strong team, much stronger than us. And I let it get in my own head, let alone the rest of the team, like that, it doesn't matter. We're going to lose anyway.
Yeah.
Looking back at it now, I'm like, actually, yeah. So
you guys could have won that round.
Yeah, it's like I kind of just went with whatever in the matchup process. We're all just a bit cavalier because I'm like, they're going to win anyway, which is probably a flawed perspective. But
no, look, I mean, I think for the next year's in August, it's going to be a really interesting one because you guys, having watched you guys play games today and played some games myself with you, and then seeing how well you did this year, I definitely think you guys are in with a podium finish in you next year.
I'll live in hope.
Maybe don't take Gene Steel Colt, Matt. Maybe take something you're a bit more confident with. And you don't pick up
a bit more
straightforward beforehand.
Oh, I'd been playing them for a while. That's the sad part. They're just a very nuanced army and I'm not necessarily a nuanced player. I in my personal life, I'm a high-performance gymnastics coach, so I actively don't be competitive in my hobby. Maybe I should be more, but...
look, 1 or 2 events a year, that's fine.
But yeah, no, so look, it won't be Gene Steel Colt. I think I'd love to see Steve or some of the others play it because they're such a good faction, but not for this player.
Well, we better hand the mic over to Paul very quickly to talk off our game, and then I might let Steve and Matt run down the Warhound games because that was an interesting one to watch before we sign off. So... Paul and I, like I say, I do apologise. I don't actually remember playing you with my sisters in 7th.
Yeah, as I said, neither do I, to be honest. It was just a wall of power armour coming towards me.
I do vaguely remember that army, because I remember going to Skulls with that army, and the only person who beat me that weekend was Richard with his double Sicarian Iron Hands in 7th, ironically. That's come full circle, hasn't it? So we played with the new Phoenix Rising Aspect Warriors today versus your tank company. And I think we both thought that was going to... I think I thought it was going to be bad for me, and you thought it wasn't going to be great for you. And then the end of the game at turn 5, we were 22-20, neck and neck, with a handful of models left. So how did you find playing the new aspects and some of the new rules?
Yeah, as you said, I thought I was going to get handed to me turn 1, given how ridiculously fast aspect are and my not great track record with Eldar, to be honest. Especially considering turn 2, Banshee's charge locked up 5 of my tanks.
Yep.
Didn't go too well.
No, that charge with the Banshees was actually pretty pivotal because it stopped almost half your army shooting for one turn. And then you had that Banshee X-Arch then tanked a wall of heavy flamer shots and survived, and then died to an explosion moments later. But it was good that that kind of showed that tank company is actually pretty reasonable. I mean, it probably misses a screen or two to just help alleviate some of that early game pressure I was able to put on you, particularly if you'd left the Shining Spears alive, which you didn't. But which is a shame because I didn't actually really get to use them over the 2 games I played today, which was one of the units I was so keen on.
No, I've learnt my lesson against Steve's Custodes. If you see jet bikes on the table, you take them down pretty quickly, because being jet bikes, they can get where they want to go very quickly, and I'll tie things up for days on days and end.
Well, the Avatar was also an interesting one for us because he didn't do so well against the Necrons in game 1, but in this particular game, we had him chew his way through a couple of tanks and then take a Hellhammer to the face and tank that, and
then carve him up with his sword. I think he did about 24 wounds in total to it.
Yeah, well, it was because his 2d6 picked the highest and he got 5 wounds on it. It was 20 something damage, which was horrific.
Bit overkill when you only had about 14 left.
Yes, that's true. But it was a really interesting game because I think there was a lot of particularly that Hellhound that we had tied up in combat with a Wave Serpent for probably 6 rounds of combat, because both of us didn't want to move away because we knew that the other would gain the advantage from that. And they were the 2 of the last things left on the board at the end of turn 5.
Yeah, I think that and a couple of heavily damaged and scared tank commanders, to be honest.
Well, there was that Lehman Russ on 2 wounds that the Striking Scorpions had been chipping away at for 4 rounds of combat and still didn't kill. And then your other tank commander was about half dead, and then I had probably 18 Dire Avengers.
And very angry Dire Avengers,
yeah. Yeah, they had the X-Arch power, which as soon as one of them died, they all got very angry.
Did you ever end up using that one? Because we had a pretty big pre-game discussion about it.
Well, that one, when the last 2 models got out to try and kill that tank commander, because they're obviously blade storming on 5s with +1 to wound, and then I only managed to roll 1/5 out of 6 hits.
I mean, it still went through, so he took him down to 1 wound.
Yeah, but I admit it was a cheeky play, looking for 6 shuriken shots to kill a Lehman Russ, but, fishing for 5s isn't so bad on 6 dice.
Better than fishing for 6s.
Well, it's only 5s.
Yeah, so exactly.
So, 6 shots hitting on 2s and then fishing for 5s isn't that long odds for 2 wounds, but then you saved it. So, we actually had some interesting... We blew up a Lehman Russ in combat with Jane Zar, which exploded, did 3 mortal wounds to her, which killed the Hellhound beside her, which blew up and did 3 more mortal wounds to her and killed her outright. That was quite an interesting little sequence there.
Yeah, and then my Lehman Russ blowing up, taking out your Etarch, who has managed to tank 8 D6 flamer shots from the Hellhound.
Yeah, the Hellhammer's 8d6 flamers killed the 5 models in the squad, and then she passed 12 of 13 saves on her 4-up armor. And then died moments later when the Crimson Hunter blew up the Lehman Russ that was beside her and then dealt the last mortal wounds and killed her, which meant I then had to try and charge the Hellhammer without the Overwatch relic or the Overwatch Banshee masks. But I got a bit cheeky with some of the charges through terrain and that sort of thing, which I'm sure, we were talking about it during the game, and Steve's done this year before, charging from out of line of sight. So
you can't really shoot what you can't see, to be honest. No. So I wish I had some basilisks.
Well, you did bring a bunch of tanks as well, and I was actually half expecting you to put those on the table instead of the Hellhammer, but I don't know that was actually a good call against my army.
Now, sometimes you just want to use the Hellhammer. As you were saying, today was a bit of a less serious day.
Yeah.
That thing is about 650 points, and it dies surprisingly easily. So sometimes you just want to use it, and it's just fun to just pick up 8d6 dice.
Well, that's it. You've got the 4 sponsors on it, all with heavy flamers, so you've got a lot of shots there.
Yeah, just be happy you weren't Chaos, because Vengeance for Cadia really hurts with that thing.
Yep.
As Bree found out.
I don't know what it is with Chaos. The Eldar have got a bunch of stuff that only works against Chaos as well. I feel like there's a pattern.
It's a shame because my next army is Chaos, so I'm going to really feel a bit of pain with that one.
Oh, excellent. Well, I tell you what. Let's hand the mics over to Steve and Matt, and we'll have a quick chat about the Warhound game before we wrap it up. Because I'd love to get both your perspectives on how the game went. Because Steve was fielding a single Warhound at 2,000 points with double Inferno cannons, and this is the intent to take to Masters. So this was this the first time it was on the table?
Yep, it's first time. It's only just been painted recently.
And it lasted about 12 minutes in the first game. That was interesting. So I'm going to hand the mic over to Matt. So do you guys want to cover your army?
Yep, so I'll start mine because mine's pretty easy. So mine, it's a 2,000 point Warhound Titan. Should be worth probably half of that, but it's got double flamers because it's the only way I can think to make it work. When it's got ballistic skill degrades after just a handful of wounds, so it's the only thing that can really combat that. And then we come against a much larger, more interesting army in Matt.
Oh, maybe larger. That thing is pretty hefty. But I was running a Asterius with the conversion beamers. Is like the big... the Porphyrian Variant, thank you. And then 2 Moirax with the conversion beamers on that. Alongside that was a battalion of Admech with the Riser 5 Cataphren destroyers with plasma and all that
plasma
shenanigans.
spam that gives you +1 damage, +1 wound, +1 to wound, +2 to hit.
It's an immensely strong combo, and it's where I leverage a lot of the efficiency, because I don't think that either of those Porphyrian variants, like the Asterius or the Porphyrian, are where they could be points-wise, but I won't harp on that.
Mike and Matt have been arguing about that for about the last couple of months.
But look, I definitely leverage back a bit of efficiency, because the Cataphrons with that Riser strat and the Vigilance detachment stuff can be disgustingly efficient. And because you've got this big, nasty 12-inch tall model standing next to them, unless you know the tricks, unfortunately, like Steve is, they look for the big thing and go, I've got to smash the big robot.
Well, you also seized turn 1.
Yes, I did.
Yes, so
which was amusing.
It was, sorry, mate.
I was going to say, that essentially then went the way we expected. Steve was right back at his deployment. He'd edged this monstrous base right up to the front of the deployment. But we were playing, what was the pointy? It's Pointy Dawn of War.
Pointy Dawn of War. I'm not. Sorry, Pointy Hammer and Anvil.
Yes. So, he was a good 30, 40 inches away. I can't remember exactly. So, my conversion beepers are hitting at exactly where they want to be, the highest angle. And so, I had that opportunity to just punch for 2 full rounds. He also charged it straight in. There were a few interesting things which I'll let Steve talk about the flamers and charging into combat with it, even if it's already tied up, things like that, which I didn't know and was shocked by.
The Warhound manages to break just about every rule in the game. It's capable of shooting out of combat, shooting into combat. It can Overwatch out of combat, which is now, I think, unique in the game after an FAQ. Overwatch is pretty frightening with 8d6 flat 4 damage flamer shots. So we're just doing, if you run some pretty, do the maths on it, nothing short of a Castellan knight can charge it and live. So that's the kind of the big deterrent. That's how the army works, is that there's the big thing that nobody can charge, and then it's got a 24-inch move and an 18-inch flamers, so you can reach anywhere on the board, provided it goes first.
So that was it.
That was it, yeah.
So turn 1, like the first game, I seized, shot it a lot, he charged forward. I think you nuked one of my Moiraxes, like the Armiger Forgeworld variants. Nuked that with 1 flamer, nuked one of my Ranger squads off the board, but then I had another uncontested round of shooting, and that's where it went down in the first round.
Well, that time it managed to get in range of the plasma.
And that's what
plasma managed to do 27 wounds in one go.
Glorious.
Which is horrific. So that was game over.
Yeah, so then we restacked. And we just agreed to let Steve play first because we wanted to see what would happen each way.
That was much more interesting. So that actually got the Warhound to have a chance to really stretch its legs. So after learning getting its nose singed by the plasma, decided to go walk to the other end of the board where it couldn't be reached, and started lighting up some of the other squishier targets around nearby. I think it just dropped some damage into the big knight, and basically tried to stay away from the plasma. And it wasn't too bad, but then Matt had managed to have his chance at shooting, but now thankfully I was inside the minimum range of the conversion beamers, so it was much less scary shots coming at me.
Strength 12, neg 1, flat 2. So I was not doing anything. This is it.
So that was interesting. And then after that chance, it managed to. I think he scraped 3 wounds off it in one round of shooting. And then so the Warhound calmly waltzed over and introduced the Plasma Squad into the Flamer, doing something.
I think it was one Flamer, like one hand.
It was only one Flamer, and managed to overkill the squad 2 times over or something.
Yeah, it was disgusting. They're T5, 3 wounds. There was 5 of them in the thing. They have a 5-up invuln.
But when you're doing
did not matter.
46 flat 4 damage shots per hand.
Yeah.
It's pretty scary. And then I told Matt, you said, you can't charge this thing, you can't charge this thing. Matt said, I'm going to charge this thing.
So sent both my Moiraxes in. They were both alive in this second game. And, he'd fallen into some ranges. I did the Overwatch and they did nothing. And I had to eat Overwatch into both of those Moiraxes on the way in. I think killed the first one. The second one, no, neither of them got in, did they?
No. They both took about 20, 25 damage each. So they were very dead very quickly.
I was about to be a bit whingy about, it shouldn't be allowed to do that, but considering, this is it.
2,000 point model.
I think it's still at a bit of a deficit, even considering all that. Which is a shame, because I would love to see big models like that, the big showpieces like that, on the table, competitively. I want it to be balanced, but it just, even then, it isn't, because, there's just so many tools you can fit into 2,000 points to deal with something like that. And screen it out and all that. So it's a shame, but...
So, I was a little bit worried about coming on here and giving away my game plan for the Warhound going to Masters, saying this is what it's got, but you don't need to build to beat this thing.
The pro stratagem of walk forward and roll dice.
No, but I think, the double flamers make it unchargeable. So realistically, I might win a game if I get first turn and it's against the combat army. Or something like that.
Jean's still a cold against you. That'll be hilarious.
That will be fun. But I think I'm expecting to lose, to be honest. I'm going in. The real reason I'm going is for painting and just have some fun to get this thing out and have 5 games. I've chatted to Mike. I think I might also bring my Custodes army down. And just, if any of my opponents, we finish a game in 10 minutes, we might just say, do you want a game against a much stronger army? And we'll actually play a game. So, there you go. Now, we'll pass one of the mics back to Mike.
Yeah, this is a bit of an impromptu recording session, so I've only got the 2 mics here, so that's all right. We'll make do. And it's been a really fun day. We've had a bunch of different games. We had Imperial Guard, the Warhound, Necrons, my Eldar. We had Admech. We had Chaos, Orcs as well. So we had a bunch of different armies. No Space Marines, no Iron Hands.
We're not competitive players. We're not meta chasers. We're beer and pretzels gamers.
Actually, I didn't see any pretzels. I was very disappointed. Although I'm on a diet, so
take a swig of beer.
But look, I really appreciated the invite to come out and play. I had a lovely time today, and it was good to get some games. I was trying to work out my last game, which I think was at Mitch's event in June, or was that? I think it was July. I haven't played a game since, so it was nice to actually get out and play some games. It made me find all my aspect warriors and.
Yeah, I think you'll be a regular invite, so we got someone a bit more skilled and competitive to make us up our game a bit.
About that.
Well, at least more experience then.
I'm certainly a bit rusty. I made a few errors today, which I was particularly with using a new craft world.
The craft world.
Trying Bieltan out, and it was like turn 5 on the game 2 where I finally went, I get reroll 1s. Avatar, I didn't find out about the Avatar until halfway through game 2 with his Feel No Pain. But it's I know most of the army. It's finding all the intricacies of it in 8th edition, because I haven't really played my craft world in 8th. So it's good to get them back out again, and next time.
So thoughts on
Jane Zar was an interesting one today, because the first game against Steve's Necrons, we were reading her rules and discovered that she doesn't actually have to be in combat with a unit to get the buffs for her attacks. So if she's within 2 inches of you but more than 1 inch away, she still counts you for the amount of attacks she gets.
Yeah, so she was trying to dodge the flayed ones going in to make sure she didn't get one go and just get into the Necron warriors. And
then I realised I should have let the flayed ones live and we'll get more attacks. As it stood, she butchered 8 Necron warriors on the charge, I think it was, and then the Manda Blasters with the new X-Arch power buffed that, and they murdered a bunch more. And then the Banshees got in and killed the Cryptek.
Who then stood back up.
Which, we did stand back up, but...
Rather like the Avatar.
I think Jane Zara at 115 points, she's not terrible. She's hard to shoot because she's a character. She probably wants an invul save, even if a little one, 5 up, 4 up ideally.
Even then, just the ability to always attack first caught me out quite nastily.
Well, it wasn't until I think Paul was going through the book at the time, and I said, can someone look and see if Jane Zara buffs the squad? And then she gives them always strike first.
Oh, right.
So...
for what little it would have mattered. But
well, that's it. But what makes it more interesting is taking them as an Ari with her and a Craft Lord detachment. Because as soon as you get Always Strike first in your Soul Burst, you automatically get +1 to hit.
Yeah, so that's going to make it very scary.
You start getting... And even today, with the Banshees killed a bunch of Necron warriors and then basically died to a model. And against Paul, they tagged 4 or 5 tanks, did a few wounds on a few of them, but basically stopped his army shooting for a turn. They're not terrible for 130 points.
Until tanks start exploding around them and start killing
then
out
they
the
start
whole
dying in handfuls. But
actually, as Matt says, the Overwatch denial is really quite frightening on them. Yeah, particularly when you're charging 20 or 40 Necron warriors with some rerolls and things going on. That's could really be thinning out their numbers quite comfortably.
Well, I just can't help but think that if I ran 30 Banshees out of Wave Serpents, which isn't that expensive, you're talking 270-ish points for the squad and the transport.
Even 3 of them, you're tagging a whole army. You're still getting a lot of firepower out of the Wave Serpents.
And all you need is Doom. One unit doomed when those Banshees go in.
I don't think it's necessarily damage. Just going in, no Overwatch, tying something up, and then being able to continuously do that. You're putting so much pressure on the opponent that they can't.
Backing that up with either Harlequins or Shining Spears or
something
the actual
hard hitting that does the real damage. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Anything that doesn't have fly worries about it, and I think that's part of the reason why you don't see so many of them. Is a lot of the competitive units do have fly.
Yes,
and that's a factor. But no, look, I'm really invigorated to play my Eldar again. I actually got to build the new Jane Zar model last night, and I'll get a photo of it and make sure it's in the show notes to compare it with the old one, which I was using today, from 1990. I'm going to say 94 or 95 when that model came out and I painted it. So I was 14 or 15 years old when I painted that model. And I'm actually intending to paint the new one in the same colour scheme, the old school, the original
black and gold,
the original second ed one. But it'll be my vastly more experienced hands painting it than there might have been on the day, and she won't be pastel pink in parts. And
yeah, well, that's like I was saying to Mike today that I've still got my first model I painted back in 15 years ago plus ago now, 17 odd years. That every time I look at a model, I'm not quite happy with it. I think I'm not really improving. I pull that old model out and go, yeah, no, you've improved.
Absolutely,
you've made leaps and bounds since you're 10 years old.
Well, thank you very much for having me along today. I really appreciated the invite, and
I'm
more than happy to try and come back if you'll invite me again.
Oh, I think this will be a regular thing somehow.
In the meantime, we'll sign off and we'll take a quick break and be back to wrap up the episode in just a second. We are. So thank you very much to the Snake Eyes squad for having me out to the Snake Pit.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure how I feel about the name.
Really? We have a dungeon.
That's true. That is true. Shouldn't throw stones in glass houses, I guess.
Yeah.
I had a good day playing. Good to get some games again. They were the first games I've played in a good month or two. And it was actually really good to play Craftworld. And they were units I haven't used in years, and it was quite refreshing and actually a little bit invigorating to get some games in and play them. So
I always find it's a big change when you're used to being the one that's in charge, and you're used to being the one that people look to and that kind of thing. It's an awesome experience to then be able to go and be a participant and not have to be the person that has to know everything.
I got a lot of rules questions.
But you know what I mean? It's a different...
It's a different dynamic,
it
absolutely.
It is a really different dynamic, and I really enjoy that change in dynamic of not having to be the expert. Well, obviously, I'm not talking about this for me, but...
no, I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah.
It was really good fun. I had a really lovely day, and I really appreciated the invite. And if I get another invite, I'll go out and play some more games. Had a really good...
Angling for another invite there.
Yeah. I've already had a PM this morning saying I was going to get invited to the next one, but
all right.
I'm sort of just putting it out there for you at the moment.
Oh, right. Okay.
So we're going to talk to some of the other teams going forward as well in future episodes. Not sure when those will be, but we'll intersperse them.
I guess it will depend on whether you're invited to go out and play with them too, won't it?
Yes. There's your hint.
Hint, hint.
And I'm going to get some more games with the Craft World stuff. There's actually a Skulls event coming up in November, a few weeks from now, interestingly. I've just realised how soon it is.
What date is that?
9th of November. And if I can...
that's run by Outpost 6030.
It is, yes.
At South Perth Community Centre.
And they're running 1,500 points one day on the 9th, I think it is. And if I'm able to attend, I would seriously be interested in trying to.
Chances are going to be slim.
Okay.
It's just checking my calendar, sorry.
Oh, well, there's one at Peel Adventure Gamers a week later, same format. But that's the week before Masters.
We have a child's birthday.
Oh, that's true. We do have one of our kids. One of our kids' birthday just after that. Yeah, okay. Okay, so that's a no-go. Someone give me a tournament to go to so I can try out these new incubi and some of the new rules.
You just need them to book it sort of 6 months in advance before any of my bookings go in.
But no, look, grab yourself a copy of Phoenix Rising. Really keen to hear what you think about it. I know that there's plenty of negativity around the cost of the box set and what you got in the box set. I've said it multiple times. In terms of value for money, when you compare the dollar values of the kits, it's a really good buy. I'm guessing that box is about $550 retail individually, so you are getting a really good savings. The value you get out of those units is the issue, and I think that competitive players can probably give it a miss, the box set, whereas if you're a collector and a hobbyist and just love the factions, it's actually worth buying, because you might not, competitively, you'd probably never take Hellions, although I'm seriously looking at them with some of the new stuff in Phoenix Rising. And most Dark Eldar players will have some already. Between Gangs of Kimura and some of the other box sets that have been around, you'll probably have some Hellions lurking around. And they'll be cheap on eBay. So you might want a squad of 20. And that's fine. You've got to sort of treat them as part of the collection rather than as part of a tournament army. And as soon as you can make that disconnect, then it's fine, because you can play with your mates and go, cool, I want to try 20 Hellions. Are you going to win a tournament with a bunch of Hellions? That's going to be a tall order. That's going to be a difficult one.
It's not. I don't think it's one that we're going to see winning like multiple tournaments around the globe. But it's not to say that a skilled player with,
if I could take more than 60, then I'd be up for it, because they're fast attacks, so you can only have 3 units of them, and the units are 20. I reckon they'd work if you went, okay, we're going to make them troops, so you can have as many units of them as you like, and then you'd rock up with like 100 plus of them. That might actually do some work.
Do you remember what it was like painting your Jane Steeler cult army?
Oh yeah, these are even worse, because these are on flying skyboards.
You are not built to paint a horde army.
No, that's true.
So I would just move on from that little idea. It's not going to go well.
Okay, we'll move on.
Yeah.
I've still got a bunch of Hellions in the dungeon.
Have you got 100 of them? And are they painted?
I've probably got 40.
Are they painted?
No.
Right.
Half of them aren't even built because they're not really good tournament choices. But
yes.
Anyway.
Okay, so any nuggets of wisdom that came out of your chat with the guys from the Snake Eye squad that you spoke to yesterday?
The Warhound game was really interesting to watch. And Steve's goal of winning 1 game out of 6 is actually achievable. I'm impressed. I didn't think that would happen. There will be some players that go, oh, God.
Well, he won 1 out of 2. That's 50% hit rate.
Yeah, but there was a guy who basically did the same thing at LVO at the start of the year and lost 6 for 6 and finished dead last.
I'm just saying, at the moment, his hit rate is...
That was the first time he'd used it,
yeah,
and he was
50%.
tabled in about 12 minutes.
Well, the second time he won.
He won, he did. So his goal is winning 1 game with a Warhound.
Tick.
No, at Masters.
Yeah.
He's actually going to bring another army as well, so that if the game is over in
12 minutes.
a few minutes, then you can play a proper game with, that won't, like, you'll obviously get your full score for the...
Yeah, but just so that you actually
get
to enjoy the game.
Not wandering around for 2.5 hours doing nothing.
Yeah. Although I've always got jobs, so if anybody finds himself bored, I can definitely put you to work.
I really want to play some more Aspect games just to try them out and, see what I can do with them. The Warp Spiders that I've built 5 of, and the 6th is sat here as an Exarch waiting to be built. They might go back into the storage, whereas the Swimming Hawks that I was reluctantly building, I'm probably going to finish building because I want to try more of them. So, yeah, I I think this will be good for Craftworld players in general, but it's not going to be an Iron Hands or a Salamander's Imperial Fists release. It'll be a good little boost for most players, but it's not going to be one that you worry about for an FAQ that's going to drive it into the ground again. If anything, Games Workshop, if you're listening, I can give you some suggestions to make some of these Exile Powers FAQ to be, quite cool.
Just on the off chance that anybody is listening, I think they've got a whole list of people to come to ask for suggestions before they get to you, darling.
Well, that's why I was doing the other podcast as well, to try and... like, those guys are playtesters, so I'm giving them my thoughts.
Right.
Before we do sign off, if you want to check that out, that's Splinter Mind, the Dark Eldar podcast. That's episode 73 was the one that I'm going to be on, which is their next episode.
Mm-hmm.
And as soon as they publish it on their Facebook page, we'll share it so you can go and listen to me more.
Just what everybody wants. I cannot wait to listen to that.
I'm sure
Again.
you can't. The time difference was interesting because one of them's on the east coast of America, one of them's on the west coast of America, and then I'm here. So there's 15 hours difference, 12 hours difference, and me.
Yeah.
So for Brian, it was 9 p.m. for me. It was 9 a.m. for one of them, and it was like 5 a.m. or something for the other one.
Yeah.
So it was an interesting recording because they're like drinking coffee and trying to wake up and.
Yeah, one of the lines that I did like the best was, no, when I played today. No, you've got to remember, I've already had today.
Yeah.
Today's over for me.
I'm in the future. So.
Yeah.
But it's always good to chat to the guys, and they've already said they'd like me to come back on and talk more Craftworld, so I'll probably do that in the future.
You were going to say Craftworld there. I thought it was something that was going to start with the same crap sound. But
and on that note, we're going to call this episode done.
Yeah.
Thank you for listening. Thank you again to Snake Eyes for letting me come along and play. If you've got any questions for them, you can jump on. They have a Facebook page. We'll have a link in the show notes so you can go and chat to them. And follow them on Facebook, and they've shared updates. One of them Alex did really well with Armies on Parade, which we've just had.
Yeah, congratulations to everyone who did enter Armies on Parade and those people who walked away with some kind of medallion. We've spoken about it in the past, but it does take, it takes a lot of commitment and dedication to actually get armies ready to present for Armies on Parade. Yeah, with the whole display board and everything as well. So, and some of the photos that I've seen coming from WA stores have been amazing, and then obviously with the international stores as well. Some seriously outstanding work.
So if you've got any photos of your Armies on Parade entries, send them through to us. We'd love to share them with the wider community that we have. Otherwise, take care. We've got doubles in a few days' time. So we've got doubles 40k, doubles bolt action, and singles War Machine all happening this weekend.
You're also trying to talk Michael into wearing a dress for Frocktober with me,
but
not
going to happen.
At the moment,
no. There's not at the moment. That's just a no.
I've pretty much got Dad convinced that he'll come in a dress.
Good luck with that. It's just not happening. Like the requirements for that would be so high as to be unattainable for you.
Right.
Like Nissan GTR unattainable for you.
Yeah, you're right. That's not happening.
Yeah. Look, I could have set the bar much lower, and I thought to myself, no, because she might let me do that. So no, let's set the bar at a $200,000 supercar.
You're right. That's not going to happen.
So yeah, look, we've got that. We've also the gaming marathon is happening down at Good Games Rockingham on Saturday with the Rockingham Historical Gamers group.
Yep.
So if you've got any questions, again, there'll be links in the episode show notes on our website. You can hit them up. There's links to all the Facebook pages and everything. And if you want to donate money, you can do that there as well.
They're gaming for 24 hours.
24 hours.
Raise money for something that I have sadly forgotten. I'm sorry. There's so many fundraisers going on at the moment.
But it's good. I mean, the community gets behind them, and it's good to sort of have that community direction to, share some of our good fortune. We're able to play these games, which are ultimately entertaining and frivolous enterprises, as opposed to.
Oh, I do disagree with you there, and we are digressing, but I actually don't think that it is frivolous. I've spoken at length about the fact that I actually think that...
It's multiple sclerosis that they're raising money for.
Right. Yep. So gaming, I think, is a great way to bring people together. There's educational benefits for, through maths and language and those kinds of things. HAS, if you've got younger children that you're homeschooling or just happen to be at school. social networking, the ability to create positive role models for people, the ability to be able to practice positive interactions. All of these things are really, they're really powerful opportunities that gaming gives to people.
Yep.
So I disagree with you in that this is a frivolous pursuit and frivolous use of time, even though I know what you're saying and why you're saying it. But it is nice to be able to add something like fundraising to help
other people who are less fortunate than us.
Okay, I don't like that either.
Oh, God. We're done. Because there's going to be another soapbox.
There might be a soapbox. I don't think that we can call people less fortunate. They just happen. This is about raising money for awareness and research into MS. Not
okay.
People less fortunate.
Is that okay?
I'm happy with it.
You happy with that?
Yeah.
Okay. Then we're done.
All right. In that case, regardless of why you game or what you get out of it, whether it's frivolous or for some amazing...
I thought you were done.
thing,
Seriously.
Happy gaming, everyone.
You've been listening to the Objective Secured podcast. If you'd like to get in touch, you can visit our website, objectivesecured.com.au. You can find us on Facebook, Facebook.com/Objective Secured, or you can email us, obsec@optusnet.com.au. Thanks for listening.